Who's most to blame for Harden's unhappiness?
To me, it's two people. It's Mike D'Antoni, the coach, and it's CP3, Chris Paul. That's what it comes down to. And mainly Chris Paul because of his injuries. He's missed about 20 games this year. He hasn't been healthy. And more importantly, it's feeding off of the $160 million max deal that he got over the next 4 years. You have to remember that if you're a player, particularly the player of James Harden's caliber, and you recognize the fact that you're knocking on the door of a championship potentially, you just went to Game 7 of a Western Conference Finals, you're trying to get back into the groove of things, trying to make some noise again to compete. And, you know, you look at a guy that signed a max extension, that max extension, denied them the opportunity to keep Trevor Ariza at that time because ownership wouldn't let Daryl Morey go too deep into the luxury tax. The fact is, if Chris Paul would have taken just a tad bit less, then you would have been able to keep Trevor Ariza. He signed 1 year for $15 million max. I was told that, you know what, he would have stayed for $12 million. He would have stayed for less. He would have given them a hometown discount, about $3 million less or so. So in other words, Chris Paul and the dollars that he commanded, because he wasn't willing to take a penny less than was available to him, particularly after walking away from $200+ million for the Los Angeles Clippers. He was going to get every dime that he could get. So that compromised them to some degree. That, combined with him being injured, obviously puts more of the onus on James Harden. In the case of Mike D'Antoni, I'm going to look at him, respect this man's basketball mind, his offensive brilliance for the most part from his years in Phoenix with Steve Nash and the crew. But in the end, D'Antoni is known for riding you until the cows come home. That's what he does. And so it's not just about the 37 minutes a game that James Harden is averaging. It's also the fact that every single play appears to go right through him. Every second that he's on the floor, he gets no reprieve, he gets no rest, he gets no break whatsoever. And it's a credit to James Harden that he recognized the urgency of the moment when they started off slow and felt the need to step it up and felt like he had to do all that he could, because it wasn't just CP3 that went down. It was Eric Gordon that missed some games. Clint Capella obviously has missed some games. So we understand that. But in the end, if you're a coach, you've got to find a way to spell for this man. And it can't be by just not allowing him to practice and giving him rest so he can give you all your energy during the game. In the throes of competition, when the adrenaline is flowing and you're going up against quality NBA competition, you've got to find a way within the game to give him a break. And I don't think D'Antoni does a good enough job of that in my estimation. And as a result, that's why I'm looking at D'Antoni and CP3 as the two culprits for any kind of dismay, or I don't want to say, because it's not like he's miserable or anything, but any kind of negative feelings that James Harden may have about the load he's carrying, unintentional. I'm not saying he did it intentionally, but clearly to me, those are the two culprits.
You're wrong. The answer is Daryl Morey. Look, James Harden's not just complaining about his usage rate. The reason he's being used so much, as we know, is, first of all, he's capable of doing it without the percentages falling off, which is amazing when you can remain as efficient as you ever were in spite of the fact that you're used as much as James Harden is. That's an amazing accomplishment that James Harden's pulling off, and his defense has been a little underrated, actually, for a couple seasons. The reason he's being used so much is because they haven't had CP3 a lot of the season. And by the way, even if you want to go to the fact that they didn't retain Ariza, that's also Daryl Morey. Clearly, the organization felt that Ariza was heading in the wrong direction. He had already peaked and he was declining, and they didn't want to be locked in for multiple years or for real dollars to a guy who they felt would be less effective going forward. But the big picture with James Harden is he seems to be unhappy insofar as he is unhappy. He doesn't seem like an unhappy guy right now. Just that the complaint that he has is the same complaint we have watching him. It's boring. It's not an exciting style of basketball. It's not the Golden State Warriors that move the ball. Everyone touches it, and it's really dynamic. And the reason that's still the whatever blame, I mean, you know, they're a great team and having another successful season and should have won the whole thing last year. The reason that's also Daryl Morey's fault is that the Houston Rockets are more devoted to the analytics than any other team. And what do the analytics say? You shoot the three all the time, and if you don't shoot a three, you better get the points in the paint. Free throw line or paint, right? So what does James Harden do? Threes, free throws. Threes, free throws. It's as boring to him, it seems, as it is to us. Of course he wants to play more like the Golden State Warriors. But Daryl Morey understands the numbers. This is how you win. And so he does it. And by the way, the same thing is true in every sport. You know, there's a reason that this phrase is ruthless efficiency. Think about MMA, UFC. originally it started out the conceit was who wins, the judo guy or the karate guy, the boxing guy or the jiu-jitsu guy? There was an answer. It was jiu-jitsu. And eventually it turned into this kind of wrestling match that fans couldn't really understand. Guys jockeying for slight advantages in position. And they had to change the rules. I mean, it got to the point where it wasn't fan-friendly enough. They stood the fighters up after too long on the ground. Think about boxing. The most effective style, Floyd Mayweather. Is that the most fan-friendly? No. Baseball, 3 true outcomes. Home run, strikeout, walk. It's boring. The most efficient way to play, which is how the Rockets play, is not only fan-friendly, but not as fun to play as some other styles. That's really what Harden's complaining about. That's on Daryl Morey. Ruthless efficiency.
Well, first of all, I think you're wrong. And secondly, I think my argument is far more compelling and interesting than yours, okay? That's number 2. Number 3, let me also say this. When you talk about CP3, the reason why I bring CP3 up, Max, is because let's harken back to why CP3 ultimately elected to depart from Los Angeles. Yeah, we could talk about the relationship with Austin Rivers, Doc Rivers, all of that other stuff. I don't care to get into all of that. What I care to get into is what CP3 told me personally upon departing from Los Angeles. He talked about the ball being in his hands all the time and how every single play had to go through him. How excited he was to get to Houston because you would share some of the on-ball responsibility. He could spell for James Harden, play off the ball. James Harden could spell for him as well. So he'd get an opportunity to get away from point guard responsibility, floor generalship, and get to be off the ball and to do some things that way. So he recognizes the intelligent player, the brilliant player that he is as a point guard and as a floor general. He recognizes what works and what doesn't work, and more importantly, what grates the nerves of a player, particularly as a season wanes.